Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
I'm ready. Bring it on.
Right on.
Woo! Welcome to the latest episode of Disorderly Blonde's Autism Podcast. This is Brenda.
And I'm Christy, just sitting over here wishing for the days when our parents would scream at us for belting out 2 Live Crew lyrics. Well, at least the parents who could speak English.
Listen, okay, I am very proud that I had my mom purchase the vinyl, clearly labeled explicit at Specs music store without knowing what I was listening to. But if Uncle Luke taught anything to these South Florida autism moms is to never be afraid to speak our mind. Banned in the USA? Not today.
Good girl. And joining us today is our kind of uncensored people. Someone who isn't afraid to raise the roof when it comes to speaking his autism truth. Hey, that rhymes.
I don't know if that rhymes, Christy, but we'll go with it. We'll go with it. Yes, the notorious J.B Handley is the co-author of Underestimated: An Autism Miracle. J.B and his teenage son, Jamie, a non-speaker, take us on their lyrical journey to unlock his beautiful voice and mind.
Bren, you mean Jamie's wise, funny, generous, philosophical, graceful, empathetic, gangster activist voice and mind?
Whatever she said. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And without further ado, in honor of Father's Day, we introduce today's esteemed guest, the dad who experienced the best 2020 ever. Welcome, JB.
Woo! It's all true. It's all true. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. Love the intro, by the way. Love the infusion of the whole hip hop thing. Very cool. Very cool. I'm very psyched.
Perfect. So we're scoring. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a huge part of my family and my upbringing. I mean, I grew up in Tokyo, and in 1986 I went to like the Beastie Boys' first concert. Okay. And I mean that was just kind of what we did, right? And so all those bands, all those artists mean a ton to me. And more importantly, I'm a very musical person, so I play music all day and all night. And so Jamie, who's often by my side, has been subjected to, old school hip hop from the day he was born, and knows. I mean, Tupac is his favorite artist. B.I.G. would be a strong number 2, and as he's talked about, I talk about it in the book. The rap lyrics, they really challenge his mind to follow along. And I think more importantly, like when you look at an artist like Tupac, who really is, unlike maybe some of today's artists, and unlike Luke Skywalker, who we can all love for the deep bass and the yes. thought-provoking lyrics, and I certainly do, by the way. He also showed, by the way, that when you ban something, it only comes back stronger. I mean, my God, right? He blew up when that happened. Right. But Tupac really speaks to Jamie, because I think he was misunderstood in a lot of ways. He was oppressed. And I think when those lyrics enter the music, that's what really caught Jamie's ear, especially when he couldn't speak, because they were speaking to him on a level, right? They were speaking to him on a level. Keep your head up, like a Tupac lyric, right? Like they really were. And I didn't even appreciate how much he was sort of connecting with various songs, and like Changes by Tupac. When you go through those lyrics with that Bruce Hornsby sample put in there, and you listen closely and you picture Jamie listening and hearing this man who he never met, who was dead before he was born. I think math-wise, yeah. And yet I think it really lifted his spirits. So music is actually a really important part of our family and my relationship with Jamie. So I'm grateful that you guys introduced the show that way. That was awesome.
And did you ever, side question that's not on the script, did you ever see a glimpse of him, let's say in the car or somewhere, kind of like, at least like bopping head or anything?
Oh, yeah. No, not even a glimpse. Like, so I think one of the, I know I'm going to jump around and you guys are just going to have to hang with me, but I think that, a lot of people by now, I presume, who are listening to this podcast, they kind of understand the basic story. And of course, we can get into whatever level of detail you want. But, I think one of the things that's challenging as a parent, when you have something happen that happened to us, where we went from a child who we really weren't sure where they were on the cognitive continuum, and they get freed through this method of communication, And honestly, you're going like, how the fuck did I miss this?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm with him every day, and I love him. And you go back and you start to see little clues and things.
Mm-hmm.
And music was something where not only did Jamie dances all the time. Okay. Any groove that he feels, he lets it go. He's not constrained by the outer world's judgment. And so if he feels the beat, he is going to be right. He always sits in the back seat. He doesn't like, even though he's a big kid, he doesn't like how it feels to be in the front seat of a car. So he's always in my back seat, and he will groove like crazy. Okay. And more importantly, he's very specific in terms of what music he wants and doesn't want. So as a simple example, like just the other day, I hit 80s on 8 in my car for a moment. I've got all my Sirius favorite channels, and 8675309 came on with that wonderful kind of opening guitar riff. And Jamie was like, turn it up. Like, you know, like he can say a word here and there. And then he's been playing that song like incessantly kind of since then, because he does have that obsessive quality as well. But so yes, to answer your question, we've known that he loves music. In fact, he's very specific on the songs he loves. His playlists have all been written to kind of conform to his reaction to, you know, various songs. And you know, you drop anything by Tupac or Biggie or Dre or NWA or Public Enemy, he's pretty much going to ask you to turn like those songs up every single time.
That is awesome.
I love it. Well, speaking of turning up the mixtape, we want to rewind way back in the day to 2019. Those all too familiar vocabulary words you used to describe Jamie's type of autism then are quite different from the ones that I just used, right? So tell our audience about the nature of his then severe autism and that most dangerous drug you say we autism parents ingest, hope.
Yeah, well, I would just say that, I mean, we say it in the book, I say it in the book, right? We would, I mean, joke, dark humor, that Jamie had real autism, right? He has the real kind. And I don't know, if you have a kid in an autism school, you kind of know what I mean, because there's kind of this fork in the road for where the kids go in the average classroom, right? There's the non-speaking, which almost always defines that fork, right? And the non-speakers end up in the life skills, okay? And so Jamie was and is a non-speaker. And non-speakers, and this is not a coincidence, tend to also have a lot of behaviors, because they're really frustrated. And so Jamie not only was a non-speaker who had, you know, mannerisms. He regulates himself through body movement that to an uninformed person looks unusual. And so you would immediately know like, oh, there's something different about this cat from the average. And then as he started to get older, and Jamie, as we sit here today, is 19, but as he started to get older, I would say right around sort of 15, he started to have relatively intense outbursts at times that would, in his case, involve, they could ultimately end up with him doing some kind of self-injury, which was often hitting himself in the head. And these were not infrequent experiences, particularly at his school. I'd say at the peak, which was probably defined as like a 6-month period of time, we're talking about 2 or 3 incidences a week where the remedy that we had agreed upon with the school was that I would drive down there and pick him up and bring him home, right? And so he wasn't speaking, he had real mannerisms, and he had outbursts. And that's how I would explain his autism. I tend to shy away from the word severe, although I know that people use it. It's not really a clinical diagnosis. I think the non-speaker speaker divide is the most clear and obvious one. And it even divides parents because, and I don't know what each of your situations is, by the way, but I've generally found that if you're a parent of a speaker, your autism experience is just different. It's not better, worse, harder, easier, but it's definitely different. And Jamie goes to an autism school. There are kids in his autism school with Asperger's who I would be hard pressed to discern that they even have a disability. And of course, their parents and the kid might disagree with me. But I mean, that's how wide the continuum is. So Jamie was on this far end where he was basically relegated to being taught kind of how to do laundry, how to sort beads, how to do really basic art. He was in the relegated classroom.
Got it. Got it. So, JB, we know that as autism parents, that comparison can definitely be the thief of autism parent joy. But we bet that you're glad that you compared notes with your friend and fellow parent, Honey Renicella, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell us about learning about spelling to communicate, or S2C, what it means to be open, and the hope just sort of seeping into you.
I mean, it's a jarring, it's weird, you know, like we autism parents who kind of hang out in our collective world, we kind of feel like we're on the other side of the matrix, right? Like we've passed through the cognitive dissonance and we kind of hold the keys to like the truth, right? I think that's kind of fair to say. Like our community kind of feels like we're steeped in truth and we're battling like an ignorant public, whether it's public health or whatever it might be. And I definitely have some of that arrogance myself, right? Like you guys are all idiots and we understand what's going on, right? We see this slow train wreck unfolding and you're all oblivious to it, right? And you know, I'm guessing your COVID experience was similar. Mine certainly was. And so to actually be caught in the middle of cognitive dissonance where you're the dumb shit is very, it's unnerving, right? It's like genuinely unnerving. And I experienced that. And, you know, Honey Renicella called me out of the blue in the fall of 2019. And I know Honey through the community and through her generosity and through just the parental spirit of sharing ideas about how to help our children. And I think parents do tend to migrate towards parents who have kids that are kind of like theirs. Yeah. Right. And so Honey has twins and one of her two twins is named Vince, and Vince is a lot like Jamie. So, you know, you sort of share notes and then you remember like, oh yeah, they've got a kid like mine. And so you're more inclined to believe, you know, spend time talking to them and sharing ideas because you're sort of working from the same deck, if you will. And so when she called and she's like, you know, you wouldn't believe the things that Vince is saying. Like, I'm like, what are you talking about? Right? That doesn't make any sense. And I use the analogy in the book of like, you know, your like relatively overweight 50-year-old buddy says, you wouldn't believe how well I'm dunking. And then he sends you video and he's like dunking. You're like, what am I even looking at? Like, this doesn't even make any sense to me. And that's kind of how it felt with Honey. She's like, because it was out of the blue. She's like, you wouldn't believe the things that Vince is saying. And I'm like, you know, tell me more, right? What else are you going to say? Tell me more. What do you mean? And she starts sending me these screenshots of all these like beautiful, complex sentences that I include in the book that were ostensibly created by Vince. And, you know, as I'm looking at these and I'm picturing Vince and the guy that I think I know, and it really doesn't make any sense. And you know, I was literally at my daughter's basketball practice, just like sitting on the sideline, and I'm like, we got to talk. And I jump out of the gym and I go into this little room and I'm like, you know, what are you talking about? And she's like, it's great. You know, she's like, so she's already kinetic. And like, at this point, like she's trying to get this story out and she's so jacked up. And she's like, you just wouldn't believe it. We started doing this thing called spelling to communicate. And you point at these letters on a piece of paper, basically. And as Vince started to get it, what we realized was that Vince is brilliant and there's this wonderful mind in there and this compassionate human being. And I'm like, so wait, so you're like telling me that these words you're sending me were like spelled by Vince? And she's like, yes, by Vince. And I'm like, I mean, in that moment, I'm like, that is so cool for you, Honey. You're so lucky, Honey. You know, what a unique situation you are in, Honey, right? Like, I'm not at all opening the door to the obvious, right? In terms of the potential implications for Jamie, because that just seems way too crazy, right? And as I mentioned, hope is a dangerous, dangerous drug. And it gets more dangerous as your kid gets older, right? You want to leave that crack pipe in the closet. Like, it just hurts too much. It just hurts too much. And I'm like, okay, you know, what is it about Vince that, of course I believe her, that this has happened for her, right? There's no doubt in my mind that she's telling me the truth about Vince, but she's already on to the next part of the story, of the next thing, which I'm not really interested in, which is that, and I think this is also true for Jamie, right? And like my initial response to that is like, fuck you for trying to get my hopes up, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's just how you feel. And, you know, I even go home and I video Jamie. Mm-hmm. And I send it to her like, this is him.
This is him, right?
Like, don't torture me. I'm so happy for you. And I'm also trying to find out, okay, what was it about Vince that must have been there? You must have done something or known something that allowed you to kind of hit the lottery like this. And she sends back this video because they're having dinner with Vince, okay? And he's like across the table from her, right? She's just got her phone and she just literally turns it on. First of all, she's helping him cut his food, right? And he's got mannerisms and he's not speaking. He's looking just like Jamie. And she sees the video of Jamie. She sends me the one of Vince and she goes, oh my God, Jamie looks so great. He was doing better than Vince. I know he's in there. I know he can do this. Oh my God. You know, and I think like I've talked about this, like, I think like the purpose of the book, the reason I'm doing this interview with you guys, it's kind of a paying it forward, like in honor of Honey in a certain way. And she bridged hope for me and my wife and my family when it was too hard to have done that on our own. Mm-hmm. And I still remember like the words from her clanking around in my head. The ones that really stuck were the obvious ones. I know he's in there. I know he can do this too. And you're just like, oh God, you know, how many times have I heard this? And then what if she's right? Yeah. What if she's right? You know? And so I do view myself and certainly my wife as being pretty stubborn and pretty resilient and pretty combative. That would sort of be our ethos as humans, right? So I woke up the next morning and I called Growing Kids Therapy Center where all this stuff was founded and made an appointment. And, you know, I called in early December and they had a cancellation in mid-December. And I'm like, I'm there, you know? So there you go. That was the origin. That was the origin story.
Well, thank you for actually leading to my next comment. Because right now, I feel like you at that moment, because my son is 19. And for our listeners who follow my son Dylan's story, I know what I read and I believe in this process, obviously, because of everything you wrote. And I'm not sure that anything like this would work for Dylan, but I'm willing to try it, you know, so I am right there. And I think he might fall more under the unreliable speaker label. And that's how my husband and I still speak right now. And I wanted to take a second and just, again, for the listeners that follow Dylan and our story, and in relation to everything that you're saying, I wanted to quote a couple of things that you said. We had no idea he had dreams, goals, and hopes for his adult year. How did he even know what dreams and goals were? Something I question all the time. On birthdays, it's no longer a day where I celebrate Jamie's birthday, but rather the day that reminds me of all that has been taken away from him and the life he missed out. Yes, yes, yes. The prospects of 30 or 40 more years like this really feel daunting, really fucking daunting. Every day. This is my husband and I every single day. And one more, which is the big one. It may be a blessing in disguise. Jamie has the kind of autism where he doesn't even know he has autism. I call Dylan in right now. That's exactly how I feel. After reading this book and the miracle, somehow the idea now that there are thousands of kids walking around.
Millions.
In these prisons of speech who are cognitively intact is both heartbreaking and fascinating. And I just want to let you know that we are determined to bring this information to light as well, to help as many as we possibly can. And maybe even starting with Dylan in South Florida, we'll see.
You know, I have to tell a little story because some of your comments kind of reminded me of it. I have a good friend who will remain nameless, and he's divorced, and his wife, and they have a non-speaker, and he's maybe a year older than Jamie, so he's in the same age range as our sons. And the son spends most of the time with the wife, like maybe 12 days, and then 2 days with the dad, right? So he doesn't have a lot of time with his son. And the relationship there, they're divorced, and it's kind of strained. And so anything that this dad comes to the wife with, she looks at skeptically by definition, right? So here he is with a buddy who's had this miracle, seems like it'd be a good fit for his son, but how does he get his ex-wife on board? And I go, look, dude, just put her on Zoom.
Oh, that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
I'll have Jamie. She can talk to him, right? This is at the point when we're completely fluent, meaning that Jamie can spell anything on the board and say anything that he wants. And it just happens to be the weekend when my buddy has his son. And so the wife's on there, my buddy's on there with his son, I'm there with Jamie. We're all on Zoom, just like this. And my buddy says, well, you know, JB, like, the one thing I'm really struggling with is that, like, in our case, you know, I just don't know that our son, like, understands kind of what language is. And he has this whole explanation, and it sounds really believable to him.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't understand what language is, and so we really have to start there, and da da da, and blah blah blah. And I go, blank, his name withheld. That is so fucking stupid. That's like the fucking dumbest thing I've ever heard somebody say. And his son's sitting next to him. And I said, and your son is sitting right next to you, and you're going to have to apologize to him once you actually understand what's going on.
He's thinking the same thing.
Right.
The fuck,
Yeah.
Dad.
Yeah. And look, I get, you know, I get why people say, I don't know, but maybe it might work. Blah, 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 you know.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
I get it too, but it's so hard.
It's all of them. It's every one of them. I'm sorry. And like, I pretty much believe that after like the first month that it was all of them. But what you don't have the benefit of is the experience that I've had in between now and then. Because the thing that my wife and I have realized is that it's really important to Jamie that other non-speakers have this opportunity. Obviously, he's an activist. They're all activists because they've all been through hell. It's really, really important to Jamie. And I was writing these long emails explaining the whole experience and sending them out to all the families at his school to try to, you know, explain the magnitude of what we were dealing with. And meanwhile, all the shitheads at their school were trying to talk the parents out of this, right? The shithead teachers, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And we didn't know what was going on. And I was finally like, they got to see it. They got to see it. They're not believing it. They're just not appreciating. They're like, oh, you know, we're really happy with so-and-so's ability to like hit the pictures on the iPad.
Right.
It's like, dude, you don't understand what I'm talking about.
Right.
Like, that's like quasi communicating, right? We've had, I don't know, a dozen families with their non-speakers come over to this house and sit down with Jamie in the same room. You guys, it is like a religious experience to see, as Elizabeth Vossler says, when you see a child in person on a board and you realize what you're actually seeing and what you're dealing with, you are not the same. Can you imagine how some of these families reacted when they actually saw Jamie for themselves? And then the magnitude of conviction they had about going for it. And of those families that have gone for it, they're all making progress and some are wide open. Wow. Okay, so like our hit rate is on its way to 100%. So, you know, oh, maybe we might. Get off your ass and go fucking do it. I mean, what are you waiting for? How many books like that do you need to read to stop doubting and start taking action, you know? And like, you know, I think about like Jen Larson, who's a well-known member of the autism community. And her son is in the book. That's why I'm comfortable naming her name and talking about Cade. And she went and saw Elizabeth Vossler right before the whole shutdown, right? So she just gotten an understanding of it. And Elizabeth kind of gave her the 3 boards to go work with at home, which is kind of what you do. And that was in like March. And so like by July, August, I called Jen and I'm like, what's up? You know, how's it going? Well, you know, we're just kind of like just spelling words. And I'm like, you need to get off your butt and go to Southern California and meet with Dawn Marie and spend a week there. She goes down there, Cade blows wide open. Her whole life has changed forever. She didn't really believe me, but kind of hung in there. And now the kid's like going to go to community college in the fall. She's changed her whole school. Her whole freaking life is like on a different path. Like I've now seen this movie so many times, you know what I mean? And you know, I just know they're all in there. They're all in there.
Now that said, sorry to interrupt you. That said, you know, we know haters gonna hate. And similar to the criticism that Soma had received for her RPM or rapid prompting method, a lot of us are familiar with, you know, you're gonna get the ones that say, this is a parlor trick or worse. How do you know it isn't? Well, yeah, there's a research study we can get behind, one we can actually get behind, right? Not to mention the hundreds, if not thousands, you know, correct me, how many people you think are spelling who are chiming in on this issue, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. It's such a pathetically stupid argument. It's sometimes hard for me to have to spend time talking about it, but I see how horribly damaging they're mostly BCBAs, they're mostly ABA people, how horribly damaging their extremely misguided, uninformed horribleness can be to a vulnerable parent who's maybe thinking about giving this a try. Like once your kid is fluent, you just think they're the stupidest people in the world. But between there lies most families right now. And so it does need to be addressed. And so, you know, I address it from a number of perspectives. So basically the argument is that the words coming out of the board are the words of the communication partner, not of the child. Okay, that it's a ventriloquist kind of parlor trick where the communication partner is very adept at giving the child subtle hints and clues that allow them to know which letter to hit so that they can satisfy the communication partner's needs, and it's not the kid, and therefore it's they even turn it into like a human rights violation, right? Because you're like taking advantage of the child, right? That's like the frame that they put this whole thing in. So there's a couple of massive holes like in their argument that anybody with even like the brain of like a mouse would understand. So I'll start with the most obvious one and work backwards. There are a bunch of kids who went from, you know, so the communication partner holds the board, right? That's like the criticism, and the kid hits the letters on the board. Well, then some kids, like my son included, he has a smaller version of this, but they move to like a keyboard, right? So Jamie now actually, if people saw like our Del Bigtree interview, Jamie spells off a keyboard that I hold for him. But then the next evolution, and this is one of them because we work on this every day at home, so it's sitting here at my desk, this thing holds the keyboard, right, in a fixed position, and then Jamie spells on the keyboard without me touching anything, okay? Well, those kids already exist, and they already said, S2C helped me get to this point of being an independent communicator.
Right.
So I say to all the jackasses and idiots out there, how many of those fucking kids do you need?
Right.
2? 25?
Yeah.
200? I mean, how many do you need? I mean, right? Like there's no, it's like the black swan thing. Black swans don't exist. Then a black swan flies and lands in the yard. How many black swans do you need to see before you concede that they exist?
Right.
Is one enough? Because you said they don't. So I'm just like, I'm mystified since those children already exist that we're even having this conversation, right? And you ask the kids who are very vocal about this topic, by the way, because they're, as you would be, deeply offended by idiots who say it's not them. So the kid's sitting there independently typing, saying the letterboard helped me get here. Help me out, people.
Right.
Okay, let's just back up just for fun. How about the thousands of examples within my own family where Jamie would come home from school upset and tell me what had happened.
Right, word for word.
And then I'd call his teacher and say, yo, Jamie told me that you're going on a field trip tomorrow and he doesn't want to go. That I didn't know before he told me, right? How many of those do I need?
Right.
Or the zillions of examples where Jamie appears profoundly frustrated, because we know what that looks like. So I go walking over and I put the board and I say, what's going on? And then he tells me something that I had no clue about, blah, blah, blah. Sam said this, his older brother. One time Sam said something really scary that Jamie took literally, that was a joke. And it really made him upset. And I wasn't in the room, right? Normal sibling shit. Sam said, blah, blah, blah. Oh, he's going to kill all my guinea pigs, right? Ha, ha, ha. Not funny to Jamie. I wasn't in the room. I didn't hear it. So he recounts what Sam told him, and that's why he's upset. How many of those experiences do I need to think that anyone who says that is a complete idiot? And that's what's really frustrating being in my position. Like, that's such a stupid thing to say. That's such an ignorant thing to say. And here's what I'll tell you. This is the most fascinating part, and I guess this is all you need to know. At Jamie's school today, June 10th, 2021, half the teachers are still idiots. Not only that, that group, that half, the BCBAs, who are unwilling to allow Jamie into a classroom that they're teaching with his board, unwilling, not one of them has ever approached me to ask for a sit down to observe Jamie for themselves and to learn more about this method. Now, I need you to think about this for a second. Jamie's been in the school for over a year, completely regulated. He hasn't had one outburst in over a year after having them like every week. He has a set of teachers who believe in him fully, who are blown away by his intelligence. I just wrote a fucking book that's all over the country with thousands of parents now signing up to do this. I'm on TV or YouTube or whatever you want to call it, talking about this, and they still have their heads down. And every time I give an interview like this and they hear it, they all get offended again. And you know what I say to all of them? You're pathetic.
Yeah.
You're pathetic.
Yeah.
You've never even asked. You're not even curious. You're teaching a room of non-speakers who are all locked down, and you don't even have the courage to wonder if maybe what you think you know or were taught is wrong. Are you denying? Do you think that we're all sophisticated ventriloquists? Are
Right.
you denying that Jamie's actually intelligent? You're, at this point, with all that has been presented, you're pathetic. There's no other word that I can think of to describe these people. And unfortunately, Jamie's school is a microcosm for what's going on nationwide with haters who try to shit on this new method. And I want to explain something that is at the heart of this conflict, which is probably the single most maddening part of it. There is a beautiful mantra in Spelling to Communicate, the presumption of competence.
Yes.
And it's a simple but a beautiful notion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be the first to admit that even myself at times, and parents within our community who we love, do not embody this, even though they might want to. The presumption of competence basically means that you genuinely believe that that child sitting across from you who cannot speak, with the mannerisms, with the behaviors, etc., is an intelligent being, every bit as capable and smart as you or anybody else in the world is. And that is such an important tenet with which to hold energy of our children with. And when you allow yourself to believe that at your core, the way that you're able to be with these kids is different. And I feel like I was maybe 80% of the way there. Like, I always talked to Jamie in a normal voice, and I always tried to include him in discussions and everything else. But the truth was, at the end of the day, I sometimes wondered if it was even worth it, right? And like, is he even getting this? I'll admit it. So I was not I was not a 100%er in terms of presumption of competence. I now am with every child. It's a wonderful place to be. And guess what? They pick up on it. And do you know what ABA teaches these BCBAs? It teaches them that the kids are less than, that they're not cognitively able. And what they do is they do all these cognitive tests that don't respect their extreme motor challenges, which is what this disability really is. And then they go, aha, see, told you so. They're not capable. And to accept that you're just fucking wrong about something that profound and important when you got into this business to try to help children, as I believe 99.99% of people who work with kids with autism did have good intentions. That's a really hard thing to ask people to make that leap. That would be like asking a pediatrician to make a leap that giving a kid like 20 shots before they were 12 months old might have hurt their brain. It's very hard for people to deal with something that when they think they're trying to do good, right? And so I kind of see that. And at the same time, I'm like, you're an adult, you can talk, get over yourself, right? I've met enough BCBAs who have leapt to the other side, who have the fortitude and the capacity to think about this in a different way. Those are beautiful people who can overcome some of those biases and even see them. And yet there are many who are still mired in it. And so, Elizabeth Vossler gave me pretty good advice early on, which I kind of wish I'd taken, which was just avoid those toxic people.
Right.
And we're trying to still square peg and round hole it at a school where they exist. And we often debate, is it worth it to keep Jamie in an environment where like half the adults are toxic to him? Honestly, it's an ongoing debate.
I have to say I was really mind blown hearing that, and I wasn't expecting to read that in the book because Dylan attends a fully ABA school as well.
Yeah.
And I'm so close to everyone in the school. We've been there for 10 years. And I can't even imagine them doing this to us. And I have a plan, by the way, of how
walk in there with a letterboard and see what happens. Trust me. I was naive too. I didn't believe Elizabeth when she told me, my wife and I had played a huge role in this school, helping get it built,
the board, the whole thing, we're everything.
Yeah. So we're super involved as well. And I talk about it in the book.
Yeah.
We're sending these texts every day. Jamie just said blah, blah, blah. And certain people on his kind of group of teachers who love him, it's like, oh my God, I'm in tears. That's a miracle. I can't believe it. Right. And other people are like, how wonderful for him.
Right. That's great. Wow.
Right. Like, what do you, my wife picked up on it way before I did. She's like, something's not right here.
I would have noticed because if they kept doing just the thumbs up or something.
Yeah. I think women are just like more like, well, they're smarter, but they're just like more attuned to that shit.
Yeah.
So I'm like just trumping along, continuing to send my text. She's like, I think you might want to stop texting so-and-so.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, there's not those reactions are not normal.
But it's just at the end of the day, it's just a freaking letterboard.
No, you don't. Yeah.
How threatening can that possibly be to someone? Like you said initially, I'll try anything that doesn't hurt my son. That's, say we've done the same thing.
Yeah, I'll talk to you in a year. Yeah.
Follow the money, follow the special interests.
Oh yeah,
good
follow
luck with that. And it takes tremendous leadership from the top of a school to deal with this issue if there's ABA people in the school. It really does. I mean, I know that Jen Larson runs an autism school out in Minneapolis, and Kate has been a student there forever. And Kate is a really, really accurate speller. I mean, my God. I mean, I don't know how any human can sit in a room and bear witness to Kate and not be changed. And I think many have been, right? Because she's sort of forced them to watch because she's the boss. And she's basically said, like, we're doing this.
Good.
If you don't like it, get the fuck out, right? Like, that's kind of what.
I love that.
I love it.
Yeah, the problem, so there's a number of problems. Like, for some people, like, insurance only pays for a school that has X percent of teachers on staff with BCBAs.
Yeah.
Right, with a degree. So then you have an administrator who's like, yeah, I believe you, but I'm trying to run a business. And like,
yeah,
if I lose 30% of my, so I understand that it's complicated, but like, you need to find an answer because this is their lives. And like, I mean, the quick math So if it's 40 or 50% who are non or unreliably speaking in autism, right? That's about the number. That's like 3 to 5 million just in the US. And there's like 2,000 open on letterboards right now, right? Roughly.
Yep.
These are all rough data. I mean, that is an unconscionably giant number.
Scary. I want to go back really quick to the presumption of competence, because my son is about to turn 17. I have a hard time describing him because people are like, oh, he's so high functioning. I'm like, get the quotes out there, because, you know, every autism is hard, like like you had mentioned before.
Yeah.
But I just want to, you know, from my perspective, the impact that a therapist had made on me. JR was about to receive his diagnosis. He was turning 3. And I sat down with his then speech therapist, and I kind of knew it was coming, but I broke in and I said, I know what you're going to say. I got it. I know what you're going to say. You're going to tell me that he understands so much more than he's letting on, right? That's what's coming, right? And I really had no idea. We were speaking to him like he was understanding, but again, like, you know, no idea. I was truly fishing for a compliment, I promise you, because as autism parents, you really want, just throw us a bone, please. We're dying on the vine over here, just please. And she turns to me and she says, yeah, no, he understands so much less than he is letting on. And I'm telling you right now, I have underestimated my brilliant child every day since then. I was truly scarred.
Yeah.
So this whole presumption of competence, I don't get it. Can't these therapists just channel Tupac? It's time for us people to start making some changes, but how? Where does it start?
Well, it's a tidal wave that's begun. I mean, I'm a free marketer, libertarian at the end of the day. And so all the BCBAs can go fuck themselves, like the ones who don't want to get on board. Like the parents are off and running. I mean, talk to any S2C therapist right now and try to get on their calendar. Like it's happening. And, you know, the conviction of 10,000 more parents like me and Lisa, like, you know, what's gonna like trigger the domino is the parent of a non-speaker who hears about this and kind of blows it off, which is fine. I get it. You know, I heard about, you know, a bunch of different therapies that might've been helpful for Jamie, where I was like, you know, whatever. But then they're going to see the kids who come out the other side, you know, like Jamie, like his hit rate on kids trying it is 100% when they see him. And this is going to happen all over the country. And then that's going to create more funding for science and to prove it. And then more parents are going to have conviction and more schools are going to be under pressure. And I mean, like at our autism school. So I know of 3 families who've left because they wanted to go pursue S2C full time and they didn't view keeping their kid in a life skills class as a good use of money. That's not enough to break the school. And I don't wish any ill will in the school. I wish they would change. Right. That's all I wish. And so those kind of pressures will continue. And so I think that I'm a big fan of truth. Kind of takes some time at times, but I think this is a, you know, hopefully the book played a role in publicizing a truth. And then the people who read the book, go to S2C and get an open kid, they're going to become the missionaries for the next family and the next family and the next family. And then the therapists are going to have to play catch up because parents are in charge ultimately, right? We're in charge, right? Yeah. No one has our passion. No one has our commitment. No one has our fortitude. We would all take a bullet for our children in a nanosecond, and we're not going to give up. And then when you have the kind of miracle that's happened to us, and Jamie hates that word, by the way. Sorry, Jamie. And the reason he hates the word miracle is because he genuinely believes every child is capable. So how can something that every child is able to do be miraculous? Because that's sort of a lottery, more like a lottery word than it is like no, they can all do this word. So he even hated the book title because of that, because it's Autism Miracle. Publisher won out because it sells books, but he doesn't like it. So I think that's how the change takes place. I mean, the three of us are presently playing a role because somebody who's listening will give it a try, right? At least one person. And maybe that will be a kid who breaks open. There you go. Yeah. And then when you're on the other side and you realize how much your life has been changed, how much the quality of your child's life, most importantly, but yours too, and your families, right? I have 2 other children. It's hard to shut up about. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, every day is a good day in the Handley household, and it has been from the day Jamie broke open. I say it in the book, and I mean it. Every night I thank God. Right. And I'm not that religious, but I don't know who else to thank. I mean, I've thanked Honey, right. I thanked DM, I've thanked Elizabeth, I've thanked all the wonderful therapists in his life as many times as I could, but I literally thank God every night because I don't know who else to thank.
Yeah.
You thank yourself for sticking by him.
That is true.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I just, what is that? There's this Chris Rock line where someone's like, I take care of my kids. And Chris Rock is like, you're supposed to fucking take care of your kids. Like, you want a medal for that? Right? I take care of my kids. Well, like, I really view this.
I don't know how you do it. What do you mean? Like, do I have an option to not do it? Do you know?
I know. So like, I mean, honestly, like I appreciate those words.
Right.
I'm like, what else would I do? It's my son.
Right. I thought about leaving him in a ditch for a minute, but.
So like, sure, whoopee, I kept going. I mean, come on. Like, can we put this in context? Like, I'm 52 years old. I can speak. I've been in love. I have great friends. I got to go to college. I've traveled all over the world. Oh, woe is fucking me. Like, as if I have a hard thing.
Yeah.
Jamie's sitting in a corner with the whole world thinking he's stupid. I mean, this kid has been through hell. Mm-hmm. It's like the least I can do with my very cushy life, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
To keep fighting for him. Right? I mean, really, that's how I feel about it. Give me a break. Woe is you. Look at them.
Yeah.
Look at what he's been through. He's still going. Like we really have asked him. And it's hard to ask your son this because, like, you played a role. It's like, how did you keep going? How did you do that? How did you endure all that idiocy from all these adults and all those comments and all the times people spoke in front of you as if you weren't there, and all the times they give you tests that your body just can't do? And I want to, sorry, it's really important for me to spell this out for people because this is not well understood or appreciated. So I'm going to go off in a little tangent here, and it might even be a little long, but I promise you it's worth it. So I genuinely believe now, and Jamie certainly affirms this, that Jamie's disability is a motor planning disability. That for whatever reason, and everybody knows my opinions about this, so I don't need to say it out loud, but for whatever reason, something damaged the motor cortex of my son's brain. You can believe they were born that way. I don't give a fuck what you believe. You can believe something happened along the way, but the bottom line is that there's a disability of motor planning. Mm-hmm. Jamie says, I'm a non-speaker with a motor planning disability. He rejects the word autism for him. It just doesn't work for him. It's fine. Autism is just a word anyway. As we all know, it's just a bunch of symptoms. So it means whatever you want it to mean. I think it's hard for us to appreciate when these kids say my body's not my friend, what they really mean. Okay, so I'm going to give you a really simple example. And I didn't talk about this in the book because we hadn't begun the therapy yet. And I wish I had been able to talk about it in the book because it's so important. We do this therapy with a wonderful woman named Dana Johnson who lives in Florida. And she's up in Tampa. I don't know are you guys both in Southern
We're
Yeah.
South Florida.
Yeah,
South Florida.
well, you should drive to Tampa and stay there for a week and hang out with Dana Johnson if you
Road
want to.
trip.
Okay.
So yeah, no, you literally couldn't have a better therapist than her. So you should go see her right away. And I know a family of a very well-known Floridian autism parent
Mhm.
whose son has broken open widely with Dana Johnson. And this person is very well known in Florida.
Hmm.
So wide open,
Oh, I know.
wide open,
You know?
wide open. So no, don't say it on the podcast.
Oh,
Wide
okay.
open.
I won't.
Wide open. Like
Sidebar.
the world has changed. The world has changed because of it. Anyway, so we sit with Dana Johnson on Zoom. She's also an OT. And we do something called initiation practice. Okay.
Oh,
And we do it right here where I'm sitting. This is my desk and this is where Jamie and I come. And so I'm actually going to even like demo it. So she'll say like get 3 objects, right? So like I'll get like a watch and Scotch tape and some shoes, some gummies. So I have 3 things in front of me. Okay, they're like, I don't know, they're just sitting on my desk right here. Okay, and they're all kind of evenly spread out. And so Jamie's sitting in this chair and I'm sitting next to him. And so then I turn to Jamie and I say, Jamie, which of these objects would you like to pick up? And now here's the trick. He spells it on the letterboard. I will pick up the watch. And I go, great. How long would you like us to wait before we prompt you? And he goes, 2 minutes. Okay. The first few times we did this exercise, Jamie sat in this chair where I'm sitting right here. And he would occasionally look at the objects and he would pick his nose and he would look around the room. Right? And we just wait uncomfortably like I just did for a moment there, you know. And then finally, Dana Johnson would go, eyes on it, Jamie. That's a prompt. And he would look down and pick up the watch. Right? And then you'd ask him what was going on for those 2 minutes. And he would say, I was trying to pick it up.
Wow.
Mhm.
So think about that for a moment.
Wow.
Like this is the thing people don't understand.
I feel like we learned so much of that from reading Reason I Jump, Naoki's Reason I Jump that, you know, you've talked about before and many of us have read, that whole brain body disconnect. But what I don't understand is that you also read about his utter feeling of despair, the thought that, oh my God, I am a burden to my family, my caretakers, and the shame that he feels. And we know this, we've read this, everyone talks about that book. And now there's your book. So what are we waiting for? That's the frustrating part.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm going to keep hammering this point.
Yeah.
Think about all the tests they do on these kids
Mhm.
where this brain body disconnect alone would explain how they quote unquote failed the test
Mhm.
because they can't get their body to do what the people are asking them to do. And when you don't presume competence, then when the kid doesn't do what you think they should be doing because there's a physical component to it, like, hey, point at the star. When they don't do it because you don't presume competence, you presume they're not worthy or capable. And can you imagine how this multiplies over the years
Mhm.
and how many different ways even we well-intended parents,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I want to make another point about this. Parents will read my book and then they'll like write the alphabet down on a piece of paper and they'll try to get their kid to point at it, you know, like a quick litmus test.
Yeah.
Is he like Jamie or not? Is she like Jamie or not? What I want people to understand is that the stroke victim analogy really holds here. We understand this concept. Someone has a stroke, blood vessel bursts in their brain, then they can't move their arm even though they could before. Then they go to therapy and basically a brain map is recreated, a myelinated pathway is recreated, and then they can move their arm again. Like we all kind of get that concept. So just accept that this is what's happening with your kid. And so if you give them like an instant test and they fail, you haven't accomplished anything, because they need time to myelinate. They need time to develop the motor pathways between their fully intact cognition and their body. This is the genius of S2C. And this is the thing that the BCBAs don't get. And we even had a BCBA at the school who wants to sit there and analyze S2C video to count how many misses there are of letters, right? Like they're doing some sort of weird ABA math, you know? It's like, you don't get it. It's binary. They're cruising along, and then one day they break wide open when the pathway is fully myelinated and the confidence is there. And so Jamie went from like spelling letters in a lesson to like the Sox won, but the Yankees are champs in my family in 1 second. You don't like measure that on a chart. You hang in there and you myelinate them until their pathways are whole, and you let them know that you know how smart they are, and then they get there. Okay. And people don't understand this brain body disconnect and how real it really is, and how real the challenge of initiation really is. And, you know, it's like, imagine you're laying on the couch and your wife or your husband is like, hey, can you hand me the remote? And it's like 3 feet from you and you can't move to get it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, I mean, so I just really want to make that point for parents that we have children with motor planning disabilities. We do not have children with cognitive disabilities. And my own opinion about the regulation side, the outbursts and everything else, it's because we're driving them crazy with our stupidity. Like, I really do believe that. I really do believe that. Like, I think we would all ultimately go apeshit and start hitting ourselves in the head if at some point we got treated this badly and this stupidly for so long. And my data point, and it's N=1, is Jamie. Because ever since he's been doing spelling to communicate, and we haven't changed anything else about his supplements, we don't give him any pharmaceutical drugs, we have no other way to explain why the outburst disappeared 100% in the school environment, but for something that S2C people call top-down regulation, which in English means he's happy and understood, and it all went away.
Yeah.
Like there's this, you know, the simplest explanation is probably the right one. Like, that's it. He was being driven crazy by people's stupidity. So anyway, sorry for that tangent, but I really want parents to understand that. And don't do a home test and then decide this isn't going to work for your kid. Go see a practitioner who's been trained. I think, you know, as I talked about in the book with Elizabeth Vossler, who was our first practitioner, these S2C practitioners, until you've seen presumption of competence manifested in another adult, you don't really appreciate how beautiful it is. Until you see the way they treat your children, you realize, I mean, imagine having a coach for basketball who's like, you suck. Or one who's like, you can do it, right? It's kind of simple, right? That's what it's like going from an ABA environment to an S2C environment. It's a beautiful thing. Go find a trained practitioner, hang in there, because every child spells differently. Every regulatory need is different. One other thing I want to say, sorry, I'm on a tangent, I'm running out of time. Most of the children that I have seen who are non-speakers have ocular apraxia. Okay. And what that means in English is they have a really hard time moving their eyes where they want them to go. So for example, and we do ocular therapy now appropriately. So I take this pen and I literally ask Jamie, you know, right? Like, this looks really easy, right? You, the three of us can all do this, like, no problem. Jamie can't do it. He can't track it. He goes away, he comes back, he goes away, he comes back, he goes away, he comes, he knows what I'm asking him to do. He can't do it. Right? And like, nobody ever told me that. Nobody ever told me how hard it was for him to move his eyes where he wanted to go. We finally realized that Jamie can read super well. He just needs two things. He needs giant font, and he needs to be able to follow the words with his finger. And when he does that, he can read a whole book. Nobody ever figured that out before. And so there was a kid who came over and did a lesson at our house, and there was a wall behind the lesson that was filled with pictures and things. His eyes were all over the place. He couldn't control them. He couldn't look at the board. They had to put a white wall in front of him and really narrow the letters on the board down to just a few at a time as he slowly built some ability to control his eyes, okay? Most of us have not been taught, unless we have really sophisticated, forward-thinking teachers, things as simple as ocular apraxia and how important it is to address that before a child can move their eyes all over a letterboard to let us know what they're thinking and feeling.
I had never heard the term until the book, I have to admit.
Yeah.
And I also have to admit that I took my phone and I gave it to Dylan and I gave him a little test. And of course he failed. Well, he got all the basic questions, but then he just ukulele'd back when I did a low risk open question. But I did contact a practitioner in my area already, and we're meeting in a couple of weeks. So there's that. And I could also go out to the Tampa area, like you said. And I am cautious, but I guess thank you for giving me hope again. And any words of advice for parents who are thinking of, like me, like of going all in, which we are about to.
It's hard, right? Because I don't think that browbeating parents is very effective, right? We're all vulnerable. And I was there. I was you, whoever I'm talking to right now. Elizabeth Vossler puts it really well. She's like, what's the crime of overestimating our kids, theoretically speaking? Like, when we're on our deathbed, oh, I overestimated them, right? Okay.
Right.
What's the crime of underestimating them?
Yeah.
Very
it's a pretty
true.
profound difference. So, take a leap that your kid is just like Jamie, and just remember that I didn't fully believe it.
Yeah. Well,
so it's okay. It's okay to have mixed feelings because I had them. I'm not a bad person. You're not a bad person. I love my son with every cell in my body, just like you love your child with every cell in your body, right? Like we're on the same page here. And so I'm here to tell you that it's true and it's going to happen for your kid. Like I'm willing to stick my neck out and say it's true for all of them. And so
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Whatever set of reasons that you've invented for why it's not true for yours, they're not true.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Barrier for parents is cost. And I was really shocked to see that the cost of the S2C is,
so like here's like the actual details. So we go to Elizabeth for 4 hours. Elizabeth Vossler at Growing Kids Therapy Center in Herndon, Virginia. 4 hours over 2 days at like $175 an hour, right? That's like the preeminent therapist in the world, Elizabeth Vossler. At the end of 4 hours, she's spent about an hour of that training me. They give us all these letter boards and lessons, and we go home. We work with Jamie every day for over a month by ourselves. There's no cost to that, right? We're just working with them. We go to Dawn Marie down in San Diego. We're there for a week, 2 hours a day for 5 days. That's 10 hours times 175. That's $1,750. At the end of that week, Jamie's open. That's our whole story.
Yeah.
I'm at like $2,500. Now I got some travel expense in there too, but some of you happen to live right near these people.
Yeah.
We just happen to not. Actually, we have a practitioner in Portland now named Dana Woodhouse. She can do all this locally now. She was just getting up and running when we started. Now she's got a thriving practice. So someone who's from Portland, Oregon can actually do it all locally and have that same experience. So a lot of it happens with the family, and that's free.
Well, looking to the future, Jamie talks about a movie version of Underestimated. And to answer his question, yes, we're available. And if there's no role for us, which, it's fine, we get it. But if he chooses to play himself, we can totally work his hair and makeup trailer, just so you know.
Excellent.
But most importantly, this is a very deep question. So everyone, brace yourself. What songs can we expect on that movie's soundtrack?
Yeah. Boy, that's a tough one. He's proving to have a pretty eclectic overall musical palette, even though the old school hip hop is at the top. I think I talk about it in the book, like he had this explosion where he starts listing all these songs he wants to hear.
Yeah.
And he brings up like
Random.
porno for pyros. I was like, what? Who the hell is that? It turns out it's a great song. Whatever their best song is a great song. Anyway, I can't remember the name of it right now. But we definitely, it would be hip hop laden. And I'll actually let you in on a little secret. So the movie is being filmed as we speak. And I'd say 95% of it is in the can. And we got really lucky. The filmmaker knew a kid with autism who he thought would be a good fit for this therapy. We have like high-end video when he breaks open for the first time.
No.
And the mom, her reaction. Right, like it's hard to capture that like in the moment with like good film. Like we have Jamie's film when he broke open, because all S2C practitioners film every session. So like it was really easy for me in the book to like go back and what did Elizabeth say and what did DM say, because I had it all on video, so I could like be hyper accurate. But there's not like a camera on my face the moment Jamie says something, whereas for the film, and the tears and the whole thing, there is for the film. So it's really cool. And we got like Cade in like his early days when he was just breaking open, and we have like Jamie and Evan, who's DMs, who's Don Marie's son, like having what they call a dyad, which is just a conversation. Like it's so cool. But then my son has a good friend who's kind of got an old school hip hop vibe to him. My older son. It's one of his best friends, and he's providing a bunch of the music for the film. It's because, if you want to go license Tupac's music, that's more the budget of the film. But so we're going to have some of our own original hip hop in there by an artist named Swade, SWADE, who's an up and coming Portland hip hop artist. Yeah, so
you
cool.
Heard it here first.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. When that movie will come out, I have no idea. My director is talented but thorough, so we await, and all these people get all hyped up, not all, but some people get hyped up on RPM versus S2C, blah blah blah. All types are in the movie. This is about communicating. This is about the beauty, the presumption of competence, and the beauty of communicating on the part of these amazing human beings. Yeah. Wow. We're not selling a certain method. It's not ever what it's been about. So anyway, so enjoy that. With that, I got to run, you guys, but I'm so grateful for the time.
Thank you for joining us. And again, the brand new book is Underestimated on Autism Miracle. It's a must read for autism families, friends, practitioners, and anyone who's ready to turn what we previously thought about autism on its head, and it is a game changer.
JB, happy early Father's Day. And to Jamie, if you're anything like your dope ass dad, we expect to hear lots more from you, your thoughts on the current crap establishment and advocacy for change. But first, college, University of Florida, University of Miami, who knows? This is not a goodbye. We will be keeping tabs on you, brother. Thank you guys so much. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. All right.